It's never fun watching an honest wrestler getting deceived by their boss, former employer, or colleagues in this sometimes quite ruthless business. But when the people regularly found fooling, cheating, or scamming their way through their careers in the wrestling bubble find themselves being well and truly duped, well, it's pretty much impossible to feel any sort of sympathy towards the dishonest carny in question. Oh, and before we get started, a quick shout out to the fine folks over at R2 Circle who helped inspire this very list. So with all that said, I am Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 8 times wrestling carnies got out-carnied. Number 8, Booker T and Kevin Nash used main event Mafia whispers to leverage offers to return to WWE. Back in early 2011, TNA started to tease the return of one of the most dominant factions in the company's history, the main event Mafia, baby. But before the band, which consisted of the likes of Kurt Angle, Sting, Scott Steiner, Booker T, and Kevin Nash, could fully get back together, those last 2 names opted to suddenly do the unthinkable. Right as Dixie Carter, the carny known for paying talent late and trying to lowball homegrown stars like AJ Styles, was about to bring Booker and Nash back, those 2 former world champions used those whispers to score themselves a nice payday to return to WWE just in time for that year's 40-person Royal Rumble. While Booker wasn't actually signed to a TNA deal at the time, Nash was and would be released from his contract just before making that sudden angle-killing jump back to WWE. The moves completely ruined that incoming main event Mafia reunion, with TNA then being forced to pivot and drop that particular storyline, as Book, Nash, and WWE left Carter with a whole lot of main event egg on her face. Number 7, the Bash at the Beach 2000 mess. When it comes to carnies in this chaotic wrestling business, they don't come much more insufferable than the constant source of idiotic booking decisions and worked shoots known as Vince Russo. But perhaps the silliest thing this former head of WCW Creative ever did was attempt to make one of the other biggest carnies in the game, Hulk Hogan, look foolish live on pay-per-view, with the Hulkster refusing to drop his WCW World Heavyweight Championship to Jeff Jarrett on the night of Bash at the Beach 2000. The two agreed on a plan where Jarrett would simply lay down and take the 3 count as a work. From here, Hogan would take the mic and unleash a worked shoot promo, blasting Russo with the words,
"That's why this company is in the damn shape it's in, because of BS like this."
Only he didn't say BS. He'd then wander out of the building with the belt. However, in a moment that apparently wasn't part of the plan, Russo would then return with his own shoot promo, one that involved him saying fans wouldn't see this piece of S-word again, and referenced Hogan's creative control behind the scenes. That's when things got messy. Not happy with the content of said pipe bomb, Hogan filed a defamation of character lawsuit against Russo and Time Warner. That would later be dismissed, and would never return to WCW programming again. A move that also resulted in the death of the whole New Blood vs. Millionaires Club angle too. What a carny stuffed mess, eh? Now this likely isn't it, but I want to know, what is your favourite WCW moment of all time? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 6, Virgil works the entire business into thinking he's 11 years younger. The late great Virgil didn't just find a way to completely work those who spent years watching him perform on the likes of WCW and WWE programming, he also completely fooled the many carnies he was employed by over the decades too. You see, for the longest time, it was believed that the former $1 million champion was born on June 13th, 1962, or at least that's what the man himself told people whenever they asked. This would have made the star 29 when he won that aforementioned title in 1991. But as Fightful Sean Ross Sapp would eventually confirm with Virgil's management team in the wake of his death earlier this year, this legend was actually born on April 7th, 1951. So not only was Virgil really 40 when he won that $1 million belt, but he actually died at the age of 72, not the 61 generally reported at the time of his passing in February. A worker to the end. Not a single soul ever suspected this legend had been tricking carnies and fans alike for his entire career. Number 5, the Ultimate Warrior legally changes his name so he can use it elsewhere. As this list will highlight again before its end, WWE would typically do all they could to ensure stars who made a name for themselves within their company wouldn't have a chance to use that title elsewhere should they depart at some point. They did this by trademarking said name/moniker, but even that ultimately couldn't keep a certain warrior from roaring into another place of work under that very handle. After the star left WWE in 1992, it wasn't long before he legally decided to change his name to Warrior, with the two parties later ending up in court to decide who legally owned the Warrior and Ultimate Warrior gimmicks. And Warrior's plan to outsmart the carny known as Vince McMahon only went and worked, with the court eventually ruling that the one-time Jim Hellwig was now legally allowed to use that Warrior name and gimmick. The star who out-carnied one of wrestling's most infamous carnies would then continue on as simply Warrior, right up to the point of his death in April 2014. Thank you for stopping on by today. Now hit that subscribe button down below for more What Culture in your day. Number 4, a Lex Luger working on a handshake deal with WWE shows up in WCW. Sticking with those wrestlers who ultimately left one of the biggest carnies in wrestling history looking and feeling like a fool, Lex Luger's decision to join WCW in 1995 was one that caught Vince McMahon and the rest of WWE completely off guard. Before becoming one of the first major names to jump over to WCW during the Monday Night Wars, Luger was actually only working on a handshake deal with McMahon. He wasn't signed to a contract, with Luger eventually recalling how he was trying to work out a deal with Vince that would allow him to work on stuff outside of wrestling too. Months passed and it wasn't looking like the pair were going to come to an agreement, but a conversation with Sting soon led to WCW offering him a chance to switch sides. The only catch was that Eric Bischoff didn't want Lex to tell anyone he was leaving WWE, not even the McMahons. And it was that decision which led to both fans all around the world and that carny in Connecticut being completely stunned by Luger's eventual Nitro arrival. Lex may have gone on record to say how he regretted the secrecy, but a carny still got out-carnied when all was said and done. Number 3, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall got raises because WCW worried they were going back to WWE. After Lex Luger showed up in WCW, another pair of one-time WWE stars decided to jump over to work with Eric Bischoff and co. in 1996. Those carnies Kevin Nash and Scott Hall had only recently agreed to do business with, however, soon experienced a bit of a shock when they learned WWE were planning to bring back Diesel and Razor Ramon. Did this mean Nash and Hall were secretly looking to pull a fast one on their new bosses? Well, that's what the folks at WCW thought, and that's why they swiftly dumped an improved 5-year deal in front of both men, whilst letting them know you're not going to pull this on us. Despite knowing full well they weren't returning to WWE, and they had nothing to do with whatever nonsense they were cooking over there, both men kept their traps shut and out-carnied the likes of Bischoff and WCW Vice President Nick Lambros by happily signing these better deals. And sure enough, when everyone sat around to watch that incoming arrival of Razor and Diesel in WWE, it soon became clear that WCW had just been worried about a bunch of fakers. Number 2, Cody uses the Rhodes name thanks to his wife. Before he was comfortably WWE's top babyface, and arguably the most over hero in all of wrestling, Cody Rhodes was a star who wasn't even legally allowed to use his legendary last name outside of the world of sports entertainment. Whenever he showed up in the likes of New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, TNA, and even AEW in the years after his WWE release, the American Nightmare would simply be announced as Cody, due to WWE owning the Cody Rhodes trademark. However, he did actually find a genius way to get around the carny known as Vince McMahon not letting him use his father's iconic last name at times. Often when Cody and his wife Brandi were announced to be heading down to the ring together, said announcers would typically say Cody and Brandi Rhodes, which technically doesn't class as using the Cody Rhodes name, right? Cody's at Cody Rhodes Twitter/X handle would also sometimes be visible on screen when the star was making his entrance, and AEW would even go as far as to really highlight that last name whenever Brandi was accompanying him to the ring too. Just look at that, we knew what you were doing. Thankfully though, the days of having to sneak the Rhodes name into Cody's entrances ultimately ended in 2020 when WWE finally surrendered the trademark. About damn time too. Number 1, Brian Pillman convinces Eric Bischoff to let him go for an angle only to never return. They didn't call him the loose cannon for nothing. And back in 1996, the utterly compelling Brian Pillman used a quite fascinating situation to his advantage, out-carnying WCW's Eric Bischoff in the process. The two originally agreed on a plan that involved Pillman being legitimately released from WCW in the wake of his Booker Man outburst opposite Kevin Sullivan in their I Respect You match at Super Brawl 6. The unpredictable wrestler was then supposed to head on over to ECW for a spell, keep getting that loose cannon gimmick over, before then finally returning to WCW hotter than ever. That was not the way it turned out though. Instead, Pillman eventually went back on his word and jumped at the chance to sign a contract with Vince McMahon's WWE after spending a few months in ECW. Just like that, Bischoff's big gamble on the now white-hot free agent well and truly backfired. The now former WCW man would go on to famously clash with Stone Cold Steve Austin in WWE after successfully working his former carny boss and earning himself quite the payday with one of the first guaranteed deals in WWE history. Well played, Pillman.